That's 45.
And we have bottom in sight
I'll
here.
hold the delta of around 16. 15,
Initial
16.
look starts to be quite sandy with some rubble around.
Okay, holding there.
We're going to let
Video,
the
how is that on mini?
ROV
Do you want me to drop it down a little bit?
come down
Or is that usable?
and settle in and make sure that they're all ready.
Yeah, we can get down here and see what these little sticks and stems are. I think maybe Lophelia rubble and possibly Thalassia detritus.
Yep.
But let's get in close
That's
and
probably
settle up,
good.
get comfortable.
Pilot, I'm going to go ahead and do
The
your
ROV
arms.
team settle in. So we actually are on the southern side of this mound, facing north today. We're going to be traveling on the south side, up over this mound, and then transecting mid-water
That
to the
starboard
second
lower
mound.
was still inboard. You should probably bring that upward.
Yeah, I gotcha. Thought it looked a little odd.
We're going to keep giving these guys another moment to make sure they're all set up and ready to start.
Copy that.
Hey, watch these. This is your pilot speaking.
Hi.
Hey. So yeah, we just got on bottom here, and my co-pilot's just stowing the port manipulator. We got the swing arms out, and I think I got my Z-bias dialed in, so we are ready to explore.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you get a quick snap zoom on the bottom just so I can figure out what's this sediment's made out of?
Absolutely. Approaching bottom. You can zoom in video. See what we're talking about here.
All right.
Got some core rubble. Some coarse mix, possibly some fine grained material as well.
You can zoom in video. You can see what this is made of.
Yeah, it looks like Lophelia rubble to me. Same, what is
Yeah.
it? Manganese encrusted?
Yep.
Ferromanganese encrusted.
Ferromanganese encrusted.
I
It's-
learned something.
So it's that iron manganese encrusting that where the exposed carbonates of the coral skeletons mix with the water chemistry. Chuck Messing did point out the other day that it could also be phosphatic encrusting. That is quite common, also seen in the Straits of Florida. I have been going off the literature where a lot of people have called this ferromanganese encrusting, although we need samples and to test for that for absolutely because they look quite similar in the deep ocean.
I see a
So
tiny
something to keep in
stylaster.
mind. Oh
Yeah, you could snap the
yeah, some
white
ophiuroid
coral
on
there.
him.
Yeah.
So we're actually looking at the side of a fan of stylaster.
Come in more if you got it. Yeah.
So he's actually fan-shaped if we were to turn the camera. And then the ophiuroid, likely Ophiothrix is the genus. This is a type of
Copy.
brittle star. They're very common out here. I think we've seen more of these than any other species when you get zoom in real close.
Yep.
From far away you can't see them, but because they're pretty tiny. But when you get this close, they're pretty abundant.
I don't see a lot here now. You can probably get a 30-meter move underway.
Whenever
1.5.
you guys are comfortable, we're ready to start transecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
it's just another
come
great
wide.
observation to point out that despite seeing what looks like an overall coral graveyard where pretty much everything looks dead, if we zoom in and capture some small elements, there are a lot of that microbiology that lives within the coral rubble and highly relies on it for its overall survival, including a lot of these amphipods, shrimps, anything that kind of sees within. So something that we may not be particularly seeing at the moment doesn't mean that it's not there. And we have a little crinoid coming off screen now. So it looks overall pretty dense with that coral rubble blanketed on top. And ooh, what is that little guy swimming right in the middle of the
Could
camera
snap
there?
it.
Fish, maybe?
You could zoom in video. Yeah, it looks like a head.
Whatever it is, it's putting in a lot of effort.
Ooh.
Ooh.
We probably blinded the poor thing.
He's gone.
And as quick as it came, it left. All right, so as I was saying, and just to make another observation about this coral rubble, we're seeing that it's highly degraded. You don't see any more of that framework structure being kept there in that in the entire system there. So it's more like a lot of broken down coral rubble pieces with a blanket of sediments in it and between it and maybe slightly over it. And a lot of these sediments are composed of various skeletal materials known as foraminifera, pteropods, mollusks, fragment shells. Oh, there he is again.
Aw.
We'll let him go.
I think I may have seen something relatively larger swimming by Sirius. I just caught it in my Titan cam real quick, but keep an eye
And
out.
we have our first sponge that we're seeing also with what looks maybe like some live Lophelia.
Yeah, a little tiny bit of live Lophelia. Maybe. Gotta get close. May just be new dead as opposed to old dead. Yeah, it looks like it might be some new
Could
dead.
frame these two up.
Or at least recently uncovered out of the sediment. It doesn't have that.
Go for the white
rust
coral
on
video.
it yet.
Yeah, it does look like it has that yellowish tint where there
Yeah.
have been some organisms attached to it. And covering it slowly. Yep.
Recent
Not seeing
fatality.
anything alive. We
No.
do have a nice feather-like hydroid on one of these guys.
Oh, that's good.
And if you see all along the bottom of the frame there, we have a lot of ophiuroids, which is what Stephanie was just referring to. They're one of the most abundant organisms that we've seen on these dives. And I can barely count them as we're looking. So they're all surrounding some of the dead coral as well as on the live sponge there. There's some more hydroids. And a lot of that fuzzy material
Okay.
that you're
Yeah,
seeing
you can come in.
attached to these coral skeletons, those are actually, some of them are hydroids and maybe some zoanthids
little
and
bit
other
of dust.
material, but a lot
Yeah.
of that is attributed to foraminifera.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
these are live foraminifera that have like sticky spicules that get attached everywhere, and they almost look like little tiny fuzzy
Pretty fine
trees.
stuff.
If we
Yeah.
ever find some when we zoom on other organisms, we're likely to find some attached to them. And they have this center structure right in the middle of them where they precipitate a calcium carbonate skeleton, and that's the same calcium carbonate material that skeletons and everything else that's carbonate base is made out of. Now the mineralogy can also be different, but usually we still have that same calcium carbonate base, and when the forum actually dies, the shell becomes part of mixed in with those grain systems, and we're seeing a lot of the overall sediments here, and they're composed of hundreds of thousands of millions of these little foraminifera skeletal shells along with some other material.
Partial.
Now we have a swimming crinoid.
Yeah, and a small sparsely branched white gorgonian, which we collected a few days ago.
And maybe another one of those octocorals that we did collect. This one looks like it has its polyps in. Can we get a quick snap zoom on him?
Oh, the white coral?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you can come in video. Take more zoom if you got it.
Yeah,
like
his
some
polyps
polyps.
are all in.
Some are partially
I believe he's
deployed.
a plexuridae. Plexurid.
Copy.
But we didn't have an official ID of him, so we collected him a few days ago. Maybe a new species, maybe... We don't know.
Yeah, we're not sure. It looks like the polyps aren't brought all the way in. Some are, some on that, that's coming now in focus. It looks like more of those polyps got bothered or frightened in some way that they're not fully contracted in. But some at the top do. And what is that? Is that like a snail or an amphipod maybe?
Yeah, I'm
at
not
the
sure.
tip?
Oh,
amphipod on the lateral
amphipod.
side.
I don't know what's... Oh, it might be a worm at the very top.
Maybe an isopod?
It could be an isopod.
After this
Looks buggish.
co-pilot, I'll come back to you.
Copy that. I'm looking down. 5-5. You got time.
All right.
Cool. Alright.
Yeah, we're good whenever you guys are.
Yeah, I
Copy
should
that.
have a little this way.
All right.
Plenty of
I'll
time.
rotate down
Oh.
for the video. Yeah. Boom.
Some small hydroids on the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some tiny hexactinellid sponges, glass
Taking
sponges
off.
in the background.
Yep. Along with more of those ophiuroid legs
video.
poking out in various places.
You
Some
look
pteropod
serious,
shell
up
in
on the
there.
port
Yeah.
side. Looks like you might have a large bush or something.
These guys are so
Maybe
fragile.
that or
They're
a
hard to
sand
really
patch.
keep intact quite often, especially when you're sieving or taking these samples. So they usually come in broken fragments by the time they make it to the surface and then are washed and analyzed.
There's lots of the crinoids, pentametroprinus. We've seen them a lot in the past couple of days. They're really common. They like to hang out on this sediment. So we've got a slight slope here, it looks like. Maybe 15, 20 degree rise, maybe.
May just be a sand patch.
Yeah, I've not seen anything large.
That's further up.
Copy.
Quite a bit further.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
On your view
And
now.
as Steph pointed out earlier, those long strands of dark material that seems to be kind of
Sand.
cascading spontaneously around the seafloor are
Looks like
these
it gets a little more
Thalassius
rubbly,
seagrasses.
though,
And
as you move
the
forward.
seagrass only forms in shallow water. It does, since it is a grass, it is a plant, it does need photosynthesis in order to grow. So they're usually in that tidal zone within the sands in certain areas, and why they're at the seafloor, we don't really know. Maybe they died and just kind of started to be swept away by the current system, and then they became dense enough to then sink into the deep water,
So
becoming
this one
part of
has
that
its polyps
detrital
out, I might
material.
go for
It was
then.
also a good observation by
The white
Scott
one.
France a few days ago that maybe it was also Hurricane
Come in.
Dorian, that when he swept through the Bahamas, he ripped up a lot of that seagrass that was there and brought it then into the Gulf Stream to be carried out and then just placed in various areas on the seafloor.
So this is that same white gorgonium we saw
That'd
earlier,
be a
except it
sponge
has
at
its
the bottom.
polyps
If you
out.
come in
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
It's a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Right, so Kim described them as snowflake-like.
Yep. Because of their pinnules, they all
Wow.
come to a point where in a lot of the other octocorals that hopefully we'll see also today, their pinnules usually are all the same size, all the way to the tip of these tentacles, but these guys have their pinnules kind of coming down to a point which makes it look more snowflake-esque. Little shrimpies.
Yep, euphausid shrimp. Can we get lasers on when you guys get a chance?
Yeah, absolutely. They're on when we zoom out. We'll see them.
No worries.
All right. Yeah, we'll try to find lasers video.
So if you've never joined us before, or you've never heard us talk about the lasers before, these lasers are 10 centimeters apart. We use them for scaling, because a lot of the stuff we're seeing can be deceivingly, well, it looks huge, but that's only 10 centimeters in width.
Okay.
So that
That's
gorgonian,
good.
we'd say is 10 centimeter, about 10 centimeters wide.
Sure.
And this is Ariosoma. It's a toxic sea urchin. We actually see them. They're pretty common. We'll see them scattered about probably most of today. If you were to
Consider
zoom in on
rotations right on the
his
A-frame.
spines,
Billowed
you'd see that
itself.
they're actually these little sacs of poison. So we don't go anywhere near them. We don't collect them.
And we know what they are, so
Yes.
we don't really need to collect them.
Of course.
And it looks like there's a chrysogorgid
6
coral,
o'clock.
and also dead center.
I'll come in the crisis
These
corridor.
are also octocorals.
Oh.
What is in some sort of
No,
squat
that is
lobster?
different. That is, I do not think that, or maybe it is. He looks funny to
Got
me.
more zoom.
I think he's upside down.
Put it down the lower
A
level.
squat lobster like this.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
you down there.
Can we get
With his
a
arms up?
tighter zoom?
Yeah.
It looks like he's upside down. Yeah,
He's
his
also-
legs seem to be up.
You can see the eyes of a Rheophalsid shrimp at 3 o'clock hanging
Yeah.
off the edge. Yep, so that squat lobster's in there. Hey, who chimed in on the line? Good morning.
Hi, it's Krista again. I just called in another line.
Oh, hi, Krista.
Okay.
Hi.
And then if we even scale just a little farther to the south or to the bottom there, I think I saw a pencil sea urchin.
Yeah, there's definitely an urchin down here.
Oh, yeah. There he goes. Now, this is different than what we saw yesterday. The yesterday's was bright orange and
Go back in.
yellowish.
We've got this white thing
Yeah, it
at
looks
9.
like
It's
a clammy
yeah.
thing.
Looks like maybe at 3 o'clock there's also something with the antenna. I don't know what that is. And I do not know what this clammy thing is.
Oh, that's a pteropod shell up on the corner, on the upper left-hand corner. But yeah, can we get a tighter zoom in possibly on this? I don't know, clammy-looking clam thing.
I think
Is it a clam?
I don't
shell?
know. We're going to go with clam for now. I don't know what else to call it. It's clear, which is really odd.
Yeah.
It might be a sponge. I don't even know what phylum to put this in.
I think what just floated across the camera was alive for it.
Really?
I can try, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's pretty small, actually.
Is it tiny?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
It might just be this,
Yeah, it's
like a...
less than a centimeter big
Yeah,
almost.
it's tiny.
Yeah, there's lasers for
Just to give you perspective on how far we can actually zoom in here.
Yeah.
Looks like we might have an ephthiid. It's the soft coral. We have a new sponge too, right?
He closed up. Zoom in.
At
I touched the
top
ground
there.
and he closed up.
Let's see if we can get a little
Um,
more. Oh, it did close now. It was open. It's closed, so it's alive.
Yeah. Maria said maybe carnivorous. I'm sorry, Chris said maybe carnivorous tunicate.
That max.
I don't know.
Oh,
It
it
looks
looks like-
clammy to me.
It looks like a
Copy.
clamshell.
Yeah.
So in the Antarctic we have. Oh, this is a snail at 3 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
With a shell. In the Antarctic we have carnivorous tunicates that look like that. It's like open mouth almost. But they grow really tall. They grow like, I don't know, a couple feet tall. And they're just like this head on a,
Yeah.
clear head on a stick. You Google them. They're really neat. Anyway, so she thought maybe it was one of them related. I think possibly it's just a clear-shelled clam, but that's really odd.
Yeah.
Like, I don't usually see too many
No.
clear shells like that.
We haven't seen anything like that.
I am enjoying this little snail, though.
Yeah.
Zoom out in a
He
second.
looks happy. Right on the right-hand side of the screen there.
Oh, it's opening.
It's also a really great shot of some sediments that I was referring to earlier.
Ever so slightly opening as it gets comfortable with us.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I touched the ground is when it closed.
Oh, so, okay. Sensitive, climbing up. Oh, you can maybe see some stuff on the inside, or maybe that's just translucent towards the background. I don't know. Looks like... Looks
don't know.
clammy.
We can get some
Yeah.
clam experts to review him.
Yep.
All right.
So just to recap really quick,
Pilot's
he's
clear.
about a centimeter wide, less than a centimeter tall, I guess you can probably say. Translucent
Yeah, he's
at
pretty,
best.
it's pretty tiny.
Yeah.
Saw an
Alright.
upside down squat lobster on on the Chrysogorges. He's having a fun day.
Looking down at you, 6'5".
Okay. I'll keep moving. Go
What is fluttering in the background there?
It's a hatchet.
Is that fish we were seeing earlier?
Yeah, I think it's the hatchet fish.
I can attempt to chase
I think
this
we
little
might
guy.
scare him off again. He seems to be quite active on the seafloor here. He's looking for something,
Or we just
or he's
blinded him.
cleaning him.
Yeah, maybe.
Good snap it.
Looks like he's cleaning himself.
Oh, no, I think we blinded him and he's now buried his poor head in the sand. Oh.
He's trying to hide, I think.
I don't know. It looks like he was on purpose brushing up against the seafloor.
I've never seen a hatchet fish bury itself, but
I'll try, yeah.
yeah, we probably just shocked him.
I don't know. He was doing that already earlier.
Was he? So fish will sometimes rub themselves on the floor or the sediment to get parasites off.
Ah.
That's not uncommon. I don't know how common it is for hatchet fish.
He's upside down now. Wow.
Aw. I think we're freaking him out.
he seems to be getting a pretty good scrub there.
He's got an itchy chin. All right, we'll let him go.
He's a little guy.
All right.
He has this really cool kind of black stripe at the top with some orange-ish. I don't know if that's more of a reflection of the color, but definitely looks really interesting. This little guy.
I do see an additional fish here. Acting a little more normal. You can come in.
Yep, it looks like
A rat
Exumia.
tail, maybe?
Yeah, rat tail. Hey, you just chimed in.
Oh. Michael Vecchione mentioned that the hatchetfish is likely not rubbing parasites off, that it is probably an effect from the lights of the ROV where he's trying just to kind of get away from that. We've confused him a bit.
Yep, we've got a rat tail here. Exumia, they're pretty common.
Hold that for a second, then we'll keep going. I think we've gotten pretty good views of these guys, this cruise. I like the shimmering scales. Just let them, yeah.
There's some really fresh coral rubble behind him. You can still see it has that white skeletal structure, whereas the rest of it's kind of been encrusted.
Yeah.
It's a nice
Next video.
hydroid
Yeah, I'm
right
still
in the
looking
center.
down 6.5. We'll let him get out to like a
Ooh, got some, maybe some
5.045.
desmophyllum coral rubble there too.
Yep.
Really nice look at some sponges and crinoids in this area. It blends really well in with the coral rubble background, so there's a lot of living stuff here. We're just not seeing all of it.
It is.
Yeah, you have to zoom in on a lot of it. There's
Oh.
a swimming crinoid.
Oh, he's moving fast.
Yep.
It was mesmerizing how they're. Alright, you can come back in on the
Seems
purple
to
and see if there's
just
any
like
interest
that
on this.
spot right there.
Yeah.
Pentametricrinus.
Oh, this guy's interesting.
Purple gorgonian.
Yeah.
I do not know what kind.
Take more zoom if you got
Looks
it.
like a small crab at the foot of him.
Oh yeah, there's hiding. So,
And a ring anemone midway up that stalk.
Yeah, with all retracted.
oh. Yep. Sorry about that. My left toe kind of.
Oh, that crab is moving further in. Really interesting polyp structure here. These polyps look broader than that white octocoral that we were looking at earlier. They're coming out more, but they're still, I can't tell if the pinnules are coming down to a point
Sorry,
like the
Vina.
other one.
They are, but not nearly as dramatic.
Yeah.
The other one's much more fine at the tip.
Yeah.
Like the little pinnules are way shorter, like almost non-existent.
out.
Whereas
Yeah.
this,
Oh, look, we're seeing
Look
another
at
one
this
of
guy.
those little clam thingies off to the left-hand side there. Although we've been informed that Chris says it's not a clam, but I'm not entirely sure what it is, so maybe someone out there can let us know.
We said 9:30.
Ready for bingo?
3 minutes.
it looks like we maybe have some macro sponges ahead
That's good.
at noon or 11.
Copy. White circular.
Another fish there, likely another rat tail
Yeah, you
at
want
the
to
center.
snap the rat tail video and then we'll keep moving. Yeah. Confirmed.
Hello.
And a crinoid, swimming crinoid. Well, a crinoid on the bottom. It's not actually swimming.
We can probably start another move.
He just can swim.
Yeah, sounds
Try
good.
to
I don't know if
30
those are more
or
sponges
20.
or more of that
Can let this go
other
video.
organism that
Keep
we've
moving.
been looking at.
Thanks.
The clam
Yeah.
that's not a clam.
Yeah, I think those are probably hexactinellids or
Probably a 20-meter move, I think, for now. And then we can.
or
looks like we're starting to get into some.
tunicates.
more
Colonial
Oh,
tunicates
is that
is
a-
another possibility.
It's a Geodia.
This looks like Hylanema possibly. This yellowy sponge that's at the center of the screen.
Do you want to look at the two? with
Sure,
the-
we can look whatever you want. We're good. I am happy doing anything.
Copy.
We can totally look at those two sponges at, that are now at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Then I'll go
Looks
up
like
to the-
Chrysogorgia to the left.
Come in on the sponges.
So
Or
these
the-
are,
I guess
I've been
push
calling them Heterotella. Shirley admonished me, said maybe Euplectella. And then we decided to move up to Euplectellidae, which is the family which encompasses both of those species. So Euplectellidae, and it's what Venus's flower basket is the common name. I've also heard it being called the wedding sponge because they're given away as wedding gifts in Japan. Well, dried ones are, at least.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's why naming conventions, right, aren't always consistent. So that's where the taxonomic name comes from. So scientists are always calling the same species the same name, regardless of where they live. So that's why we went with
All right.
Euplectellidae.
I think we're clear with
That's
this
its
one.
taxonomic
We'll
hierarchy.
hop up to the next sponge.
Its family name.
And they have 2 little shrimp, each living inside one of these sponges. And as they grow, they get trapped because they can't find they're too big to come out of any of the pore sizes, so they end up living together, and it's a male and a female that always live together. Another pancake sea urchin. He looks almost upside down.
He does. It looks like something flipped him over.
Yeah.
That's
Frame
odd.
it up, both of them. Good two.
With another one, we saw these sponges on yesterday's dive or the day before.
I think we've seen them every day.
Oh, okay.
This is Hylanema, which actually grows on a very long stalk of spicules. They can grow a couple feet tall.
Yeah, let's do that.
This one doesn't have much of a spicule stalk today.
Sure. Hey, come in. Hylanema.
And then it looks like this blue sponge is probably Hymodesmia. Oh, yeah, so we can kind of see his spicule stalk underneath
Yeah,
him.
super short.
So he'll grow, that spicule stalk will likely get a lot longer over time, and he'll sit on top of it. So it looks like a ball of cotton candy on a stick.
I don't think it tastes as good, though.
No, I would imagine it doesn't. I would imagine the spicules would probably stick right inside your cheeks. Very unpleasant.
Probably get a full specimen.
Not that
with
anyone should
lasers.
try it.
Hylanema. Because it's high off the ground.
Hylanema. So there's also some ophiuroids underneath. That's a really common brittle star around here.
All right, video. We can zoom out and get the lasers.
Very small.
Sure.
Usually a centimeter or two.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome.
So this is about a 10 centimeter sponge.
Yeah. All right,
He's a
thanks,
type
video.
of hexagonellid sponge or glass sponge. Oh, we have a stalk crinoid.
Oh, I see that.
Dead center screen.
You want to snap the crinoid?
Oh, yeah.
Stalked crinoid.
Now these guys have the same kind of root feet that the unstalked crinoids have, or the non-stalked crinoids rather. They don't think swim very well in the water column, if at all, but they can walk to a new location. And we have a non-stalked crinoid hanging on to him, a smaller version.
Crinoids on.
So whereas the non-stalked
Ready for
crinoids can
this?
just simply let go and float in the water column and kind of swim their way through. They're mostly carried by the current, but they can control generally where they land and where they keep swimming.
When you say
These-
swim loosely.
Yes. These stalked crinoids, if they do want to move, it's unlikely they'll be able to really effectively swim in that water column, so it's more that they walk across the seafloor into a new location. So it looks really creepy, something out of a Stephen King novel.
Horror film.
You can zoom out with maybe good lasers on it.
We have a Nice little
Lars, you ready?
octocoral behind him. That was a yellow one. I'm not sure what that was.
We're going to switch
It is
pilots real quick.
Stranger Things Day, so if you watch that show.
Is that a thing?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a really good show. You should watch it.
Okay. I don't know. I get scared quite easily.
I was scared the first few episodes, but it gets easier.
You're just used to the trauma, maybe.
All right, we got a little
Still
bit more of a
swinging
slope
bit
here. 30 degree maybe.
So Chris was saying those clammy-looking organisms could be a carnivorous tunicate.
Can you select the top
And
of the mound?
she says she's
now?
not sure if they've ever been reported in the tropical western Atlantic. So
You can
if
just
we do
select it,
see
yeah.
some, we'll consider taking a sample,
No,
but
yeah.
we have to double check on that. Well, we have some more of those octocorals in the background and those single-stocked crinoids. Well, the stocked crinoids. They don't come multi-stocked.
Looks like we've got a little more depth in the structure to the Lophelia rubble.
You can see a lot of that trapping of the sediments that's happening a lot within the structure itself. The structure gives it more of that lumpy texture, but being slightly more in the water columns makes them susceptible to a lot of that sediment that's being transferred also in the water column that gets then trapped and baffled within their framework system. And if the corals don't get degraded until they're really like flat along the water column, this is one of the main things that helps the development overall of these cold water coral mounds, given that this is a cold water coral mound. Oh, look. Hi, fishy.
Do I do a snap on that video?
Just trying to get away from you.
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
So we saw him yesterday, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, not sure what he is.
Sorry, video. Thought he was getting dirt back the other way.
Some really, just an overall nice view of what we're looking at. A lot of different hydroids and octocorals.
Yeah, it looks like our biota is increasing quite a bit.
There.
Looks like there's a
little bit,
jellyfish
maybe?
also in the water column just there floating by.
He's getting up pretty high.
Oh,
Alright, we'll let him go.
he's getting away.
Alright. Another crinoid swimming.
Oh, he came back.
So we're about to hit the flat area at the foot of this mound, so it might get plateau a little bit here. We'll have probably a decrease in slope as it flattens out.
We're seeing some of different species of octocorals all around here.
Yep, and an increase in biota.
So we are on that southern end of this mound, going upslope.
Yeah, we have more of these white gorgonians we collected yesterday, the small, sparsely branched. Most of them have their polyps in, it looks like. Oh, maybe not. From this far away, can't really tell. Yep, the small pink ones are, look, the pink bush, the small pink bush is Chrysogorgia.
Oh, we have that blue encrusting sponge that we saw yesterday.
And that would be Hymodesmia, likely. The white Eupactylidae. The Venus's flower basket, or the wedding sponge. We've got a cool sponge here at noon. It looks meshy. If we can get a snap zoom on that.
Yeah,
it's coming in dead center right now.
Understood.
Little fan. I see no Antipatharians and I see no bamboo corals, both of which have been pretty abundant the past couple days. Yep, this is maybe a Raspoliidae, or it could also be a Bryozoan, which is a totally different family than Raspoliidae, which is a sponge. We did collect a Raspoliidae similar to this a few days ago, so we don't know the species. Let's see what we got here. I believe this is probably a Raspoliidae or a sponge.
So Okay, coming a little bit further. Come down.
Got some ophiuroids hanging all around him.
Yeah, so that's a sponge. The bryozoan is usually a flatter. This one has some rounding to it. The bryozoan is usually flatter, and you can actually see the little squares that the critters live in.
Yep.
In the bryozoan. This is a sponge, probably in the family Respiliidae.
Chris agrees.
It's exactly Stephanie.
Yes.
This would be a demospongia.
Ready? Coming up.
Although it looks glassy like the hexakinetics. Actually, we have a farrea here to the right of the
Right, the faria.
which is more like a convoluted, thin sponge. So but it looks like an hexakinetics. It's a demospongia, poecilosclerida. And they form these fans, and they have this typical lace type of structure.
Is Poecilosclerid a order?
Poecilosclerida.
Is that an order?
It will be the order.
Order, okay.
Yes,
Do you still think Respiliidae for the family?
Those are real quick.
Yes.
Okay.
Raspailida is the family. Let's check.
What are your thoughts on
It
that?
has been jumping from order.
Too much?
I will double check and let you know through the chat.
Just an
But
oscillation.
it's the family Raspailida
Oh, wow.
that has been ordering some Poecilosclerida. Let's look right now in the word for
See
the
that?
database.
Oh, so
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Try 'em again.
Yeah, it has that
basically
cone
there's a
shape
dead band,
with
right?
a
So
single
like
base.
Likely
You're
it's
toggling
a
between,
fan.
like,
if
a
we were to whip around the
command.
other side, it's probably like
okay,
a
just
kind of
curled
bent
in
fan.
And no
fan.
Yeah.
command?
Okay.
We're
And
good
so
whenever
the way
you
the
guys are
props
ready
work,
to move on.
they go from 0 to like
Cover that.
7%, and then back off, and then they have to like kind of go up to like 10% and then back down.
A little another sponge
And then
hanging
what
next
was
to him. He
happening is you
looks
would like
Pilot's clear
mostly
on
dead,
videos.
but still hanging on. That little tubular sponge.
Cover that.
Yeah.
Left now.
like it was a heady. Like
All right, if you guys go to stream
Yeah.
3,
Right
you
at the
can
dead
see
band between like command and no command.
the bottom left-hand corner, the
Gotcha.
Fledermaus, which is the computer program where you
Cover
can
that
visualize multi-beam, which is the depth
Bathymetry.
data.
Yep.
You can see this really prominent mound that we're about to go over. Right now, we're at the foot of it, so you can see the ROV and
Like a move
the
underway.
Sirius floating above as we float along.
Wanna do,
on the bottom.
Keep moving, Lars.
D2 is
30.
in blue and Sirius is in
Let's
white.
go at 20 this
Yeah,
time.
Keeping watch over it.
Yeah, so as we
Actually, no,
move
15's
forward,
good.
you'll be able
15.5.
to see where we are
30.
on
Yeah.
the bathymetry.
You'll
So.
track it with us.
I think we should keep moving to the mound.
I agree.
So it looks like an increase in coral rubble depth maybe here. It's a little
Yeah.
thicker,
Looks like
maybe a little more formed. Maybe Ficalia.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be.
Let's look over this edge here. That's fun.
You know,
Just looking at this small mound.
it continues. Just to see.
We're seeing also an increase in slightly larger sense of the biota. Couldn't see it all before, but now that we also have a lateral view, we're able
There's a
to
nice
see the
slope.
increase.
We got a nice slope.
We selected waypoint 2 pilot.
So
Looks
I
like,
would guesstimate
from
the slope
mean
on the
to
left to
waypoint
be
2 is,
about 40 or
29 degrees.
45 degrees. If you draw a square with your mind and look
as
at
we,
the
like,
angle from corner to corner,
forward,
that's how I tell,
turn
just
starboard, but
winging it.
it's pretty flat, so I figured we could just.
Copy that.
Have another one of those Venus fly trap sponges. Venus
No,
basket.
Venus's flower basket.
Venus's
Or
flower
a wedding
basket.
sponge, if you call it a wedding sponge. We've been calling it a wedding sponge.
Yeah.
Euplectellity, the family name.
We're seeing really nice frameworks that are still intact from the coral system that once lived here, or at least around this area, maybe further upslope. We're not seeing it as degraded as we did at the base of this mound. So we're coming up over a slight hump at the southern end of this mound. We haven't really started the overall ascent slope onto the major portion of this mound yet here.
Pretty good tracking on that.
Dead sponge off on the left-hand side.
It might be just Hylanema.
It's pretty good tracking for the vehicles.
It's just a little bit on the brown side, a little yellowed. Probably covered in bacteria and stuff that isn't coming through its siphons, its pores.
Here we're getting more Chrysogorgia.
We're backing down here on the slope.
So this just seems to be a little ridge along our way towards waypoint 2. So we're just going to kind of hop over this and continue up, which is why it looks like I'm going downhill right now.
We have some maybe newly dead coral rubble in the upper left-hand side there. Doesn't really have a characteristics of being alive.
No, it would be a lot whiter than that. Really bright white. Or yellow. If it was in Opsamia.
And just if you take a quick look at camera 2, at your screen 2, you'll be able to see a really great shot of D2 hanging out and observing the seafloor. And this fantastic piece of machinery is about 9 feet tall and weighs 10,000 pounds. So just to put it in perspective, even though the resolution is fantastic, you kind of don't fully appreciate the grand size of this ROV. And it's just an overall great shot that you can see overall from Sirius. And Sirius keeps that balance between the ship and the ROV intact, as well as watching over the ROV and maybe getting an overall sense of the general area of what we're about to come up on.
Yeah, so Sirius acts like what we call a clunk weight. I'm sure that they'd probably be offended if I called Sirius a clunk weight, but it pulls the movement from the ship away from the main ROV, the D2, which is at the bottom. So when you watch Sirius, you can kind of see him bouncing around a little bit. Likely that is a pull from the ship movement.
Can we get a quick zoom on that left-hand coral? It's like right next to that white coral that's standing up. It's towards the left side of it. It almost looks dead. It's kind of blending into the background really nice. Just a really quick snap zoom. It might look like something that's alive or just something that's standing that's covered. You have great eyes. Thank you. Oh, it just looks like it's absolutely covered.
Good, come in a little tighter.
Hydroids and stuff? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
This is what you were talking about.
Yes, there's lots of little hydroids.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe an old dead, it could be an old hydroid, it could be an old coral.
Yeah, it looks like it had some sort of framework system that's now being totally overrun.
I'll come down a little. Holding there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like it was a coral. Maybe a black coral at one point. The stem of a black coral, just based on the texture, but really can't tell. You probably have to pull it up.
Yeah, looks really
get
bumpy.
a cross section of it.
Copy.
But it is covered in ophiothrix or ophioroids that are also known as brittle stars, and lots of hydroids on it, living hydroids on it. That's what this stalked, feathery-like objects are.
Yeah.
They're a living animal.
And a little sponge off to the side there.
Yeah, we're good whenever you are.
Yes, thank you very much.
I did not see that. That monitor is not on.
Yeah, we tried to turn it on and it did not. Come on. Copy that.
Copy that.
And there seems to be a critter off on that little branch there.
Sorry,
just got out of
I couldn't
focus,
hear what you
that little
said.
red dot there.
Maybe a hermit,
Not sure
I
what he
think?
is.
Yeah, hermit. Hermit crab. And he found himself a nice little shell.
So there's a guy in the background. I apologize, I've gotten so used to taking still shots, This guy back there.
I have another colonized squirrel skeleton in the background.
You want me to come up a little bit?
Yeah, looks like
Oh, and a tube worm.
So this is the guy you're going for.
And there is what we talked also about earlier on that left-hand hydroid there. There is a living 4M. Oh, it's actually quite covered in living 4Ms. So you can see by those little like spicules hanging out there, coming out from all directions, and that little cylindrical center, that skeletal center there, that once it dies, it does become part of the sediments. And they're so small that you would not really be able to see them overall. But we do know it's a coarse-grained sediment. This kind of sediment usually is about larger than 250 microns in size, which for sand grains, that is indicative. That's usually the size fraction where we call it a coarse sand. Anything below that is usually ranges from medium to fine sand to silted, muddy textures.
Yeah, for my geology class in grad school, we had to pick through tons and tons and tons of sand, looking for 4M tests and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yep.
The little tiny paintbrush.
Yep, a little paintbrush that you have to dip slightly in some water if you want to pick them up. They're really light.
They're quite beautiful, though. We put them under electron microscope.
Yeah.
Yeah, electron scanning microscope. It's really pretty.
They are very beautiful. They can hold their structures really well, and you're able to see all these little tests can mean an indication of different species. And one extra test versus another one can simply either mean a different range in size or growth rate, or it can be in a completely new species on its own. So these little tiny sand grains are quite important to the overall benthic communities and also the water column structure.
I've got you at 8.5.
What the cliffs of Dover are made out of? That the 4M tests?
Well, yes, but they have been now so degraded to the form of a chalky material.
Looks like you got a little bit of
so that's usually what a lot of chalk comes from. Actually, it's a great way to introduce that. It's actually a lot is calcium carbonate. Yeah. Most of the chalk that you're using in any sort of classrooms or something today, although most now I think are expo markers. Yeah. We're whiteboard
looks
people
like we're
now.
Up a little bit of uphill.
Any sort of chalk that was made before was made usually was mined out of these areas with these highly degraded carbonates, and it comes so fine and just overall you cannot tell now anymore what the actual original carbonate was, but it's just so fine ground and altered that it has that light chalky material. Although for the when chalk became very, very popular, they started producing a synthetic kind of it, so it wasn't always mined until we invented the expo marker, but definitely for a while it was one of those main things that came out of there.
North or something.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Neff?
So I'm not sure if it's coming in clear on land side, but there's a lot of...
Oh, we were? Okay. Yeah.
Crinites.
I think that would get us a little closer to the top. Yeah.
So if you were to zoom in, you'd see them a little clearer, but I see quite a few of them. Yeah. They're brown. They have 5 arms. They're Pentametrocrinus atlanticus is the genus and species of these guys. And they're pretty abundant. They're just difficult to make out in the brown, with the brown background.
Come center myself.
Copy that.
And we're seeing some of this coral framework. We're seeing a mix between more of that degraded, broken down framework system and a few small patches of maybe some better intact frameworks along this.
Yeah.
Slope here.
I like 000.
We're now reaching the top of that first little hump.
But if you look at the wind, it says 3.6.
To get to the main summit.
I'm sorry, watch these. Was that a request for something, or?
Oh no.
Okay, sorry.
Looks like maybe that was a soft coral coming right off screen now.
You want to do a snap zoom?
Can you zoom in on the dark spot there really quick? A snap zoom.
Caught my eye as well.
I don't know if that was anything of interest.
I think that's what we've been doing.
More Rebel.
Okay, feel free to come full wide video.
We're good, thank you.
So watch leads, I don't know if you overheard our discussion here. We seem to be kind of on the inside of a ridge that will kind of head a little bit north and then head northeast. So our thought would be to climb up to the top of that ridge and then follow the local high all the way up to waypoint 2, rather than getting into this gully and going up.
Okay.
Do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Excellent. So we'll come a little west first, and then we'll acquire the ridge, turn back north, and then follow it as it curves up and around.
Sounds good.
Just seeing if I can get some more detail on that. think that's about as good as we're going to get.
Yeah, we started off on it, I think, and then kind of dipped down.
Oh, just directly on the way to waypoint 2.
Well, we have
Yeah.
a single stocked something.
Is that of interest?
A quick snap zoom,
Okay. Video?
just to get an idea of
Quick
what
snap.
kind of what it is.
Crinoid. Stock crinoid with a
Oh, yeah.
bunch of hydroids attached to it, maybe.
And a little
Yeah, some kind
hermit
of
crab or
yep.
snail or something. Not sure.
Sure.
You gonna zoom in on that clam real quick, or
Yeah,
whatever he
we'll
is,
zoom in.
gastropod? See if I can see if he's got legs or yep,
think it's a snail.
Yep, it's a gastropod.
Yeah.
I want to say Olavulidae, but I know that that's the other one. So theirs are nice and smooth. Their shells are nice and smooth. A lot of the times their mantle, which is the soft part of their tissue, will actually come up over the shell, which keeps it clean. You can see his foot attached. He could be eating these zoanthids that are attached to this crinoid. You can see his little eye and his proboscis. So those two antennae are sensing smelling and
come up on the
sensing
rotator a little bit
chemicals in
there,
the water column, and then
video.
you can see his proboscis coming out. Looks kind of like a little elephant coming out, and his eye spot. So you might go ahead and eat some of these if you can get a good look at them. Slow moving.
Looks like the current's pulling it over. Oh yeah, pilot's clear when video is. Sure. Copy that. Just
So, great shot there. Thanks, guys.
yeah, push it forward.
Some
See if we can
possible
find
some
the
crescent
top of this
gorget
ridge.
off to the left-hand side there with, oh, is that another crinoid behind it? I think.
Yep.
Almost got you excited for a black coral.
Nope.
Yeah. At least not yet.
Maybe up on top we'll see some. Alright, so if you're just joining us, we are on a newly mapped area. We're going to be traveling across two large mounds that are about 60 meters tall.
Yeah, so Copilot, I don't know.
The foot of the
They
mound is
told
at
you we're trying to
840 meters.
reacquire the ridge, take the ridge top all the way up.
The shallowest point
That's
is
good.
780 meters, so we have a 60 meter rise. We are right now at the foot of Mound 1 on the south side of Mound 1, the southern mound. If you go to feed 3, you can actually see that the multi-beam in 3 dimensions has a 3 times exaggerated, but there's some great mounds here. We are outside the habitat area of particular concern, so this is open. We're traveling up this southern slope. We're seeing a lot of Lophelia rubble and some glass sponges and gorgonians. So there's a Hylanema, that glass sponge we saw earlier, but this one's up on its stalk at 9
Maybe
o'clock.
spin a little bit
What's the number
more
of that monitor, Chris?
to stub.
Got a nice
What's that?
slope
Number 9.
here.
It died earlier. I don't think we wrote it down.
You want to do a snap zoom
Looks
here?
like maybe
Video?
20-degree slope.
Set
There's
9.
a small
sponge.
hexaxonellid sponge.
Okay.
One
Feel
dive
free to
6,
come out.
right?
Yeah, dive number 6. So Copilot, it looks like if I was to go forward here, I'd get up onto the ridge.
Let me turn with you.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Just until we acquire this,
Now
and
we've
then
got a lot more coral rubble. Looks like there's a lot more standing dead, maybe.
Yeah.
So we can push to the top of this, get up, and then follow.
Quite a dense patch. It's getting more and more dense as we're going upslope. And I think, is that a scleractinian we see off in the distance, or a bamboo coral that's kind of bent over there?
You got it back, Chris.
Where are you looking?
On the left upper side of that screen,
Yeah.
that little white patch there.
Probably Lophelia. Might be old, new dead.
New dead. Oh, and
New
it
dead
looks like we're a jellyfish is swimming right above to where I
We
was
tried to
referring
cycle it,
to.
but
Maybe
maybe
snap it on that.
failed.
We
Might
want
be
to
kind of
snap
hard
zoom
to
the
get.
jelly.
Still having?
Cool.
Ooh, nice. So he's different than some of the other species that we were looking at that we've seen before.
Okay.
We saw a lot of these helmet jellies.
Oh, that's great to
This
have
is
back row.
different.
Change the direction on me.
Drifting along nicely. Just keeping off the seafloor so he doesn't get stuck or tangled in any of that rubble.
This one's totally clear. He's got really neat attachments where his tentacles are.
Okay, 10 more
It's like a
seconds
flower
video.
almost. He hasn't eaten in a while either. He's totally clear.
Yeah.
And we'll let
You
him
can see
just
his
drift off.
mouth opening. That little hole in the middle.
He's looking for food.
Alright.
I think they're always looking
Pull
for
up, please.
food.
Yep, doesn't come
Thank
as in abundance down here.
So yes, here's some dead standing coral on this edge.
Some stalked crinoids, and yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken that I almost saw some bands around that coral that we were about to get a zoom in on that left-hand side. And it looks like it was a bamboo coral.
If you want to steer me to it, I can.
Oh, it just got off frame off
Oh,
to the
sorry.
left-hand side. Keep going a little more. There. Just came
This
into
guy?
view.
Say
Yeah.
straight ahead?
Yes.
Or, okay, if you want to come in,
A little to the left-hand
a
side
little
there.
to the left.
No, that's a crinoid, yeah. Keep going.
There.
Upper
Oh,
back,
the one
upper
laying
left,
on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Am I
looks
still
like
moving?
dead
Let's see.
I
Lophelia.
believe
Oh,
we're
yeah?
stationary.
Oh, okay.
The polyps confused me for banding.
Okay.
Had some crinoids around him. He's
Alright.
starting to be taken over by some of the microorganisms. Oh,
Full
look, we
live
have
video.
a sponge garden ahead of us
nice.
here. Really, they're small. Some are more bulbous
Yeah,
than the other
I think
ones,
this is
but
the top of the
we're
ridge
starting
here.
to see
Go
this
follow it, I'll start coming
little
back to the north.
octocoral and sponge garden in this area.
And lots of these small, sparsely branched octocorals that we likely collected a few days ago.
I think we put it back in when we got a new version of HiPack. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we're having a high diversity of different sponges in here. We're seeing a lot of those corals,
turned
those
it up.
octocorals that we did collect the day before yesterday. And if we can get some snap zooms on them, just want to make sure
Sure.
their polyps are out, because on the day
These,
before yesterday, we did not see a
wanna
single
come
one
in
of
on
these
these?
guys have their polyps exposed.
This one
And
here or
now-
the one
yeah,
underneath?
that
me?
one looks good. These ones, they look quite fuzzy. The polyps are exposed. And we have a soft coral also on the left-hand side of that frame there too. But this guy seems to be quite happy for the most part. Some of his polyps are in. But we
Okay.
are seeing quite a bit of his polyp exposure here. So the
Cover
water
that.
column must be good. Something in the
Sounds
water
like-
chemistry they're probably liking, looking for
We've had
food.
quite a bit of these. We can come over to the soft coral maybe on the left.
Another sponge there in the distance. Another one of
Scoot out
those
over here.
looking like a clear encrusting
I
sponge
think
right there.
it's There.
Yep, Nipseed. This is
Really
a true
nice soft coral.
He's got most of his polyps sort of retracted, so they're closed but not totally pulled in.
Yeah. And then if we can get a background zoom, there seems to be a yellowish of the